A certain madness afflicts the world. We humans haven't had a globally connected civilization for very long, and yet here we are, utterly divided, at a time when the very planet we belong to demands we unite as a thinking, caring species. So what is this madness that divides us, and where is the path to recovery? In 2017, American feminist Judith Butler called for an account of how power functions and shapes our understandings of womanhood, not only in society at large, but also within the feminist movement.
4 years later, here am I, with this strange hybrid telling. I was already working on it when Butler made their call, engaged as I was in a decades-long research project inspired by my degree in English and philosophy, probing the steamy nexus of power, sex, religion, and politics. It goes without saying that Butler wasn't asking us to look at womanhood in isolation. So, following in the footsteps of Andrea Dworkin, who published Intercourse in 1985, I went right back to basics, to the root cause, you might say, of all gender conflict. I've called what I found the politics of penetration. So what is, or are, the politics of penetration? Well, it is because apolitics is a system of power relationships and also a system of thinking about power relationships. And I see the politics of penetration as a way to reframe current debates about big world problems by looking at the philosophical underpinnings of how societies allot value and make decisions. It's an evolving summary of a broad field of study, a thread of thinking running through history, ethics, physics, metaphysics, and feminist philosophy, but also right back into prehistory. The politics of penetration is a study of the interplay of power between opposing forces, opposing ideas, and complementary elements in our universe, our environment, our cultures, and our lives. As a theory, it crystallizes the human dynamics of a value system we inherit and perpetuate without ever quite understanding, and offers them for critique. It observes the path of human history, the development of human culture from cave painting to the internet, and the evolution and proliferation of spiritual and materialist cosmologies. And in order to presume to be a theory of cosmos, it boldly attempts a synthesis of Eastern, Western, and Indigenous thinking. Speaking of which, this work is made on sovereign Aboriginal land, and I wish to honour the elders of the Gadigal. So, you're impatient now. What's penetration got to do with it? What's the first binary we know? The first opposition we learn upon sliding out into this world? In, out. And the next, in my mouth or not? And what is the first question our parents wanted to know about us? Girl or boy? Innie or outie?
All our understanding of the world, and therefore all our thinking, is founded on these elemental contrasts. The tension between possibilities, the shock of difference, and the discovery of inequality through desire, fear, and structural disadvantage.
Whoa! Technical term alert. We will now have a brief explanatory interlude. Structural disadvantage is when one party has less opportunity or ability than another because of differences in their respective structures and/or their relative positions in a larger structure. It's an aspect of structural inequality which you can look up on Wikipedia. That entry starts with difference between nations. Landlocked nations are disadvantaged, for example, but the structure in question may be geographic, economic, political, or personal. The primary personal structure that can disadvantage us is gender. Beyond that, we're also vulnerable by race, class, location, physical, intellectual, and relational ability, and a heap of other stuff.
Everyone is structurally disadvantaged at some time in their lives, but some of us, actually most of us, one way or another, endure the lifelong reality.
Life. Yeah.
In a world at least as competitive as it is cooperative, structural inequality confers significant and cumulative advantage on certain categories of people and commensurate disadvantage on others. And structural advantage is the basis of power. And here we reach the crux of what divides us. Do we deserve our luck? Is it God's will? Is this how it's meant to be, that humankind divides into winners and losers? Or is circumstantial misfortune just a brute fact of physics, of nature, that we as social creatures can best transcend by helping each other?
Wikipedia doesn't mention that the central argument between the political left and right is whether and how much to combat structural inequality in society. And so to the original structural inequality, sex. Biologically, the respective demands of insemination and gestation create two primary structural differences: masculine strength and feminine encumbrance, which I could detail as breasts, menstruation, viability, gestation, breastfeeding, and child rearing, all of which compromise mobility and autonomy. But when wealth production and defence become a society's primary goal, women have inbuilt liabilities. Exploited by the unencumbered, feminine encumbrance becomes cumulative disadvantage. Masculine priorities come to define human goals, and equilibrium is sacrificed for development. As Gerda Lerner wrote in 1986, the whole system of hierarchical governance and structure is inextricably involved with gender. Race, class, and gender oppression are interconnected and have been from the beginning. This isn't just politics, it's psychology and biology and culture all entangled. Sex is a primary ordering system, maybe the primary ordering system. It orders not only how we see each other and ourselves, but how we think. Remember, Sigmund Freud said that sexuality is the key to understanding the human mind. I think it's also key to how the human mind understands. Look at how we arrange binaries, fundamental building blocks of meaning and understanding, analogous to the raw, emblematic biomechanical roles of the sexes. Light penetrates darkness. Light is hard, darkness soft. We think of active male essence and passive female essence. These sex-based assessments are the foundational metaphors that give rise to the Taijitu, the yin-yang symbol. The politics of penetration uses a modified yin-yang for its own symbol, because this thousand-year-old Chinese wisdom is another valuable key to how humans think about sex, gender, consciousness, agency, and power. We do this analogous gendering automatically, explicitly in the case of nuts and bolts, plugs and sockets, and other things designed to penetrate or accommodate. But we also do it when we personify complex and vulnerable ideals like justice and liberty as female, along with cars, ships, machines, nations, and anything else that requires a firm hand to steer.
We do it unconsciously, man, with abstractions and generalizations that reflect patriarchal priorities.
We do it implicitly too. Beauty, strength, primacy, vulnerability, authority, duplicity, superiority. You personally might not gender these, but the society around you does, and not just in the West. I wonder if you think that patriarchy is simply the way of the world, the way it's always been. Far from it. Anthropologists estimate patriarchy to be between 6,000 and 12,000 years old. Human culture is 100,000 years old, and non-patriarchal cultures still exist to this day. Lots of them.
But patriarchy gives a society certain competitive advantages and certain fatal flaws. Modern patriarchies are no longer simply about the authority of men. Rather, patriarchy, entwined from the beginning with private property, privilege, militarism and commerce, has become an economic system that privileges masculine modes of behaviour and penalises the feminine, throwing human development and society out of balance in ways that have been sometimes productive and sometimes catastrophic. Imperialism and capitalism, patriarchy's powerful progeny, now threaten the very survival of life on Earth.
So, in summary, the politics of penetration is a neutral term encompassing the full range of attitudes toward gender difference. That said, we are intent on defining an ideal. Sex is a primary ordering system, and the contested hierarchy between the sexes influences how we allot value in the world. It colours our understanding through conceptual gendering, in which valuation is influenced by a thing's perceived relationship, actual or metaphorical, direct or indirect, to some aspect of sexual reproduction. Patriarchy, a relatively recent development in human culture, exploits feminine encumbrance to turn women into a resource for masculine goals. In the process, patriarchy devalues the feminine, weaponizes penetration, and aims to sever humanity's connection with Earth. That ancient alienation has reverberated throughout history and metastasized into the great crisis of our times as the biosphere defies our imagined mastery and counterattacks. Today, patriarchy is embodied in the structures of law and government, the benefits and abuses of imperialism, the proliferation of weapons, the history of monotheistic religion, and most insidious of all, the power of capitalism. Patriarchalists are evidently willing to destroy life on Earth rather than give up their ascendancy. We call that phallic heedlessness tumescence, and mastering it is the politics of penetration. I'm Jack Lorian Pascoe, and this is my YouTube channel, Philosophilia. Like, comment, and share this post. Find us on socials. Join the conversation on our website. And if you love this project and you want it to keep going, please join my Patreon.